Ladies and gentlemen, on the Paco Arespacochaga Podcast, live at Paco's Place, Mark Damian. That was just a leader. Huh? That wasn't the intro yet. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. And the podcast will begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Damian back in the studio.
All right. It's good to be here.
Back in the studio, back in LA.
Yes.
It's good. Where'd you come from?
I was just recently in Detroit.
Okay.
Freezing.
So you flew, right?
Yeah, I did.
What's the airport situation like?
A little light traffic-wise, which is great for LAX.
Right.
You know. There's 3 seats, and they block out the middle seat, so you're at least, you're further away than we are.
Yes.
It's there's no in-flight food service, which is a drag. I got to admit, as a Delta Medallion member that gets, perks like food and stuff.
This time, zilch.
No, it is not. I've flown a couple times during this crazy year, and later I think at the end of last year and just recently. So yeah, both times it was pretty much standard, no food. You get a bottle of water.
That's
like
it.
this.
Not even peanuts.
And so you get goldfish.
Oh man,
you get some goldfish, and just enough to get you hungry. And then you're like, oh man, I am starving. I'm so glad I got some beef jerky for $15 at the airport.
Yeah.
In your bag, and then you eat that, and they give you just enough to get even more hungry.
Right. Why were you in Michigan?
I was working diligently with the Josie Pace camp, and they're the hardest working people in the business. I swear. Did
you visit your folks too?
I did. They're in a new house.
Wow.
So I got to see the new house, which was bittersweet. I'm glad they're comfortable and in a nice place.
Yes.
That they're happy with. But the house that I spent age 13 when I left.
Where the drums were, the Neil Peart.
Yeah, you remember.
Yeah, of course.
When I got the basement and I was styling down there. They moved out of that house, and it was that was the last time I was there. So that would have been in, I want to say, August of last year is when I flew in to help them move, but I didn't actually end up helping them move. I ended up getting all my junk out of their basement that I had left there. Relocating it in various storage facilities and at Ken's studio and such. Ken Roberts,
Ken Roberts, also with
producer
Josie Pace.
of Josie Pace. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was supposed to help them move to the new house, but then their closing date got moved to like a couple days after my flight was leaving back to LA. So I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to help actually move. That's a drag, because everybody likes to help people move, right? That's what we look forward to when our friends or family call us up and we're moving. Can you help? Ooh, yeah. Nobody likes that.
Zero.
So
that's a backbreaker.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
I move enough I'm a drummer, I've done my fair share of moving. Every gig is like a move.
Yes.
You're moving
like
a lot
our
of
joints,
equipment.
our finger joints are, twisting all those.
Yeah, and that's my
screws.
That's my. It's not about riches and fame.
No.
It's about getting to the level where you're not setting up and tearing down your own gear. That is my level of like. That's when I know I've made it somewhere, is if somebody else is carrying and setting up and tearing down my gear.
You know what the humbling experience was for me? So in the Philippines, Intro Voice, my band, was a big band, right?
Yes, I know. When the podcast that I did last time with you aired, my Filipino friends were, oh my God, so props to you, my friend.
Props to you too. Yeah. So I had my roadie, Mark Anthony, do all the stuff for me.
Yeah.
And when I came to the States first, before him, I had to do everything again, right? Mm-hmm. You know that feeling of looking at my own kid.
You thought you were done with that. But I got that for a hot minute too. And it goes away, and it comes back,
yes.
And then it goes away again. And there's a great story that I read about in Modern Drummer once, the famous Louis Belson. Who was doing a clinic show, and it was from the perspective of somebody that's a fan of his, and the guy got to like hang out with Louis Belson after the show, and they're talking, and all of a sudden he's like, the guy's like, Louis, do you have anybody helping you with your gear? And he's like, what did you think I invited you here for? So this guy from the audience got to help Louis pack up his stuff. So it's the leaps and bounds and
Right.
the ebb and flow of what
But you
we
know
deal
what?
with in the industry.
I don't know what it is, but drummers do help drummers.
Yeah, because we know.
We empathize with each other.
But
Like,
I don't know how you are about it, but
I am.
somebody asks me if I need help tearing down or setting up.
No.
I usually say no.
I say no.
Because I'm so particular
Yes.
about the way things get.
Yes,
packed up
there's a science, and it's a unique side. Like your style is different from my style.
Sure.
Cymbals are like
Don't take that arm off
yes,
of that cymbal
yes, yes,
stand. That stays on.
that articulating arm. There's no memory lock on that thing. Don't take it out.
Yeah. So I'm like that.
Yeah.
So even though I'd love, unless they're trained
Yes.
to deal with my gear, which I've experienced.
The
that
only
before.
thing I would let them help me do is
carry it.
from
Right,
the right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it, and then leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then carry it back to my car. Leave me alone because in the trunk there's a place of how I want them.
Oh
placed.
yeah, and that's the trick of not leaving anything behind. Remembering how everything is situated in your vehicle is how you know if anything's left on stage. And
Yes.
you do that last dummy check. If you've got an
Yes.
extra little space somewhere, you're like,
Yeah,
no,
no.
there's a missing floor tom in this outfit here. Yeah.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
Now, so Josie Pays.
Josie Pays.
Any tour happening or just an album?
There's stuff happening. Those guys did not stop writing. They took this last calendar year that we've been dealing with as an opportunity to build up a ridiculous amount of content.
Nice.
Meaning new songs. I think, if I can remember correctly, there's at least 4 new singles that are going to, be unleashed. And I think 3 of those will have videos. We've
Right.
been shooting videos. That's what I was just in Detroit doing. I was doing a combination of tracking drum parts to yet another new song. So that's probably the 5th new song. And shooting yet another music video. So it's just, when we're able to, the content is just going to be endless, and we signed on to a new management company that's here in LA called
Nice.
the Oracle Management.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. And even if there wasn't a pandemic, our instructions were to not release anything until
Right.
further notice because they're doing their job
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
The behind the scenes stuff of like shopping it.
Hard work pays off.
Oh, man, I hope so because I can't even speak for myself because I'm out here in LA and I do some demo stuff here and I fly to Michigan and I do the stuff there that I need to do. Those guys are working so diligently and
But
so
it doesn't
hard.
mean you're not working though.
No, but I'm not working as hard as them. I'm just trying to give them their due.
Okay.
I'm not working
But you
nearly
see,
as hard.
Mark, when the pandemic happened, shout out and props to Michael Abad because we always talk about you, even when you're not here.
Oh,
Like-
I hope it's good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And we figured out like when the pandemic happened, like oh my God,
Oh, yeah.
that's his business.
Yeah.
And all that. How can we help and
Sure.
and all that? So how was it? How was it for you?
Well, you lose a good chunk of income from not touring and doing this, especially summertime. The other artist that I play with, Laith El Sadi,
Yes.
pretty active. He's in
You still
that.
did shows with Laith, right?
Well, no, we weren't able to play at all, and and he's another one that's his livelihood. So he's been doing the Facebook,
Yeah.
acoustic
Live stream,
performance, live streams and stuff like that to stay afloat. But so yeah, and he's one of those guys that plays the festival circuits and he gets
festival.
those Grateful Dead type fan base,
Yes.
type people out to his shows and buy the merch and that
Right.
drives the machine. And we weren't able to do any of that, and especially summertime and fall in the Midwest or wherever we're at in the country, we didn't get to do any of that. So that was a big chunk, financial chunk out of the books.
Right?
Thankfully, I diversify my portfolio enough.
Can you share like what you do?
Well, I went on the road with a TV show called Startup, and we are on PBS. and it's on 1 million times in LA. So if you haven't heard of it in LA, I don't know what rock you're living under, because it's on a lot. If you're a PBS watcher, you know, and a lot of people are, it's still one of the top networks on television,
right.
is public television. So I've been working on that show with 3 different hats. I do field audio, so I'm on location. I do the music supervision, so I'm choosing all the music.
Yeah, the score.
Yeah, and I do the audio post mix. So I have 3 titles on that show.
I remember when you were here last, we were talking about you building a library of.
Yeah. There was a time, because I've been with the show now. We're going into our 9th season.
So this is it. This is still it. We were talking about during the first podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So we've been doing this for 8 seasons now. This year will be our 9th season. I've been on the show since season 3.
Yeah.
Season 3, I was and I don't know if we got into this much when I was here last, because we went through a lot. We talked for 4 solid hours.
That was
man.
Good talk. I like.
People are probably tired of me, but I hope not.
No.
But we went through my whole, you wanted to start from the very beginning. So
context,
3 years old, playing drums up, through the thing.
And to give you an idea, this is not your last, okay? This is your second, right?
Okay.
Which means people who watch those part 1, part 2, when they come to this, can refer back to part 1 and part 2, and then come back to this again and all that.
I felt
stuff.
good about those interviews. That was
right. That was all about you.
Yeah. So when I moved,
season 3,
season 3 came about. And this is the show that features entrepreneurs. Gary Brado, the creator of the show and the host of the show, goes around the country interviewing people such as yourself that started their own thing. Maybe quit their day job and
start up.
Did a startup.
Yeah.
And it could be a shoe store. It could be a coffee shop. It could be, some of these businesses are, multi-million dollar, establishments, and some of them are mom and pop shop type things. But it's meant to be an inspiring program, to maybe inspire and motivate somebody that's feeling in their dead end job,
or who are on the fence to do the same thing.
That it is actually possible, and
Yes.
we get comprehensive on like how these people got the capital to get into it and do the thing.
That's what we're doing now, right?
Yeah,
same thing, to inspire and to inform. Yeah,
exactly, and that's the kind of shows that that are inspiring and motivating.
Which is why that's who you are. You're an inspiration to a lot of drummers starting out there.
That's
also.
why I like talking about this kind of stuff, because
Nice.
that's what it's all about. Paying it forward.
Yes,
as they say.
So how did you get the gig?
I got the gig because Gary Brado, the host and creator of the show, started the show. He shopped it to different networks. Different networks liked the idea of the show, but the bigger the network, the more they wanted to get their greasy hands on.
Yes.
More
control.
Let's. It's an inspiring show, but we want to get more conflict and more like we want. If there's partners
drama.
in the business, we want them to fight.
Yeah.
And no, that's not what this show is about. So long story short, PBS said, this is great, and he just pitched it as a local show.
Yeah.
For the Detroit area where they're based out of. I get so much stuff from Detroit. I got 2 artists that I work with out of Detroit and a TV show, and I'm here in LA. So he did 2 seasons. We had a conversation on the phone or maybe in person, and he asked my opinion of the show, and I told him, I said, you're featuring 3 businesses in a half an hour. That's too many.
Wow.
And your audio is not up to par. You're slacking on that, probably because he didn't budget enough, like they do. They always undercut the audio is the last line item on the production thing. So budget. So and he's like, well, what would you think of mixing the show? I'm like, I mix records. I know how to produce and mix records. For I know how to make drums sound nice.
Yes,
I know how to get the vocals in there and do all that stuff. I've been doing that for years. I don't know the first thing about television, so no. And I said no, and I said no, and I had moved to LA during this time, and started realizing how difficult it is in Los Angeles
Yes.
to get your, just a foot in
Yes.
any door. And, and I'm trying to do the drum thing out here. And I flew back to Michigan for some Laith Al-Sadi shows. And this was before he was on The Voice, so we were still doing small shows. And he was doing big enough shows to get me out for like a 2-week run of the Midwest or whatever. So I had lunch with Mr. Gary Brado, and he's listening to my sob story about how tough it is in LA, and I'm basically getting my butt kicked out here. And he saw the moment of vulnerability.
He saw his leverage.
He saw it, and he literally pulls out an envelope and slides it across the table and says, "That is payment for a full 13-episode season of audio post-mixing. I want you to mix the show." And I opened it up and I said, "Yes, I will mix the show. No problem. I will figure it out as I go. It's audio. How hard can it be?" So I got some books and I watched some videos and I got the what do they call them? The specs from the network.
Yeah. What they need.
And I learned what LUFS meant. And, instead of decibel levels, that's how they gauge the loudness.
For broadcast.
For broadcast and all that stuff. And had to learn on the fly on season 3. So, and then season 4 came along and I got a phone call one day saying, "Hey, our audio guy got deported." And Deported.
Wow.
A week before a 6-week tour that starts next week,
right?
The following week. So I'm on the phone and he's like, "What do you know about field audio?" And I'm like, "I don't know anything about field audio. I know about recording audio in a controlled environment in a studio, miking up a drum kit, miking up a guitar amp, and getting bass and vocals and things like that. And I don't know, I know that they walk around with a boom mic and headphones on and a recorder, and I don't know anything else." And he's like, "Well, you didn't know anything about audio posts either, and you did fine with that for a season. So, let's do this." And the conundrum was that's when Laith was on The Voice. And so I had a dog in this race and he was doing well. He ended up being in the top 4. And so I'm watching Laith on TV doing very, very well, which means that's good things for me, because as soon as the show ends, which was, I think, around March of that year, this was 2016. And I'm thinking, okay, now I got to decide between a TV tour and a musical tour. And of course, there's more money in TV, let's be honest. And But it was not even about the money. It's just like I will say no to the TV thing, but I don't want to put my good friend and this television show in jeopardy either. Not that they couldn't. I mean, he's very good for looking out for his buddy. I've been friends with this guy literally since kindergarten.
There you go.
Not too many people have friends.
That's right.
That last that long. People come and go in our lives, and Gary and I have been friends since. I mean, the real funny thing is when we were 7-8 years old, I used to run around with a recording device, and we used to do these fake commercials and these fake interviews with my sister or whoever we can get to do an interview with these little 7-8 year old kids. So the how that came full circle is amazing, pretty amazing that we were kind of meant to work together in that capacity. So so the first thing I did was I hung up the phone with him. I'm like, all right, let me figure this out. And I call up Laith, who has still got, I think, another week or 2 on The Voice, right? Because he's a finalist. And I called him up and I told him exactly the whole layout. I'm like, this would be a 6-week tour on the road with a TV crew. I don't want it to interfere with what you might have going on when you're done with this show. And you want to talk about quarantine. He was quarantined for so long on doing that season of The Voice. It was from October to March, where he's just stuck in a hotel room. And
there's a non-disclosure agreement there too, right?
Non-disclosure. The first part of their shooting The Voice is not live, so he cannot say anything about anything to anybody for months. Right. So he's like, "Look, Mark, when I'm done shooting next week, I am taking a month and a half off from life. So go do your TV show. And it was serendipitous the way it worked out. And I flew to Seattle and met up with the crew, and I was told I would have a whole day in the hotel room to figure out hands-on, like I had been reading the manuals, and like I found out all the gear that they rented for the field audio beforehand, and I'm like feverishly and diligently reading all the stuff and watching YouTube videos, and they're like, you'll have a day, you'll fly in on a Tuesday night, you'll have all day Wednesday to be in the hotel room and get hands-on with this gear. I'm like, perfect, because we don't shoot until Thursday. I'm like, great. So I get off the plane. I meet the crew. This is like 10 p.m. at night in the hotel in Seattle. And I'm like, I'm really excited about tomorrow getting hands-on with this gear for a whole day before we shoot. And the producer looks at Gary, and she's like, you didn't tell him? And Gary's like, no, I didn't want to bum him out. We had to move it up a day, so we're shooting at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Oh! I had no leeway of time to figure out the gear hands-on. And you guys know because you deal with all these contraptions and all this TV stuff. Not one battery was charged in that box of gear for the lav mics, for the bag itself that has the recorder in it. So I'm just like, it's 6 a.m, day of, and I'm plugging in things, and I'm on the phone with the guy that owns all the gear, and he's trying to help me through it. So, I mean, it was trial by fire, and I think that's one of the best ways to learn, because I remember, they laugh about it now because they visibly saw me shaking when I was miking up the first subject of the day, and I'm just shaking and miking them up.
So up to now, you're still wearing those hats?
Yeah. Nice. So ever since that season, I've been doing the field audio.
The mixing.
And the mixing. So the mixing came first, then the field audio came.
How about the audio
season.
Library?
The music supervision job came a little bit later because we were doing that season. We were doing the first season that I was on for field audio, and we were touring from Seattle to San Diego. So we did the whole coast, and it was gorgeous. Wow. It was an amazing experience. We got to see so much awesome stuff. It was long. It was a 6 week thing, and it was pretty labor intensive, but. Yeah. You're with a buddy, you're with a film crew, and you're having a good time. That's
your band. I mean, right there.
It is your band, and I got to learn a lot. I got to see a lot, and I got to take notice that they upped the game in terms of, I got to see season 1, season 2, then I got to work on season 3. Now we're in season 4, and they're shooting in 4K. They've got a drone operator now. And I'm like, if you make me use that crap music that we've been stuffing in there from audio blocks for $100 a year that we pay for, it was like, I'm not putting bad music to amazing visuals anymore.
So
we are
did you
budgeting.
Take care of that?
They said, okay, we don't know anything about that area, so it's up to you to, And I treated it like I treated it like, when you own a home, which I never had. I've had condos or apartments.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather have a condo than ever own a home. I like the idea of calling somebody and saying, hey, my air conditioning's broken.
Let's
fix it. But what you do when something like that happens is you get 3 quotes. Right?
Yes.
So I figured out, I watched enough television to know that when the credits run, they have to acknowledge who's doing what.
Yes.
And where they're getting their music from.
Yes.
So I had it in my head that I was going to create a majority of this music because, as some people might know, when your material airs on television, you get money on the back end. Yes. So this is all that business stuff that is so elusive.
We talked about that briefly the last time, and that's why I'm excited to know more about how that's panning out.
I wanted to create a majority of this music because I wanted the credit, and I wanted the back end finance on that stuff.
Especially if that show gets syndicated, even if it's out. I mean, you still make the
Yeah,
money
it's on
forever.
airplane, it's on flights, it's being, dubbed in other languages all over the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that if my music is in that, then I'm getting a little bit more. I'm getting, the money to do the job, but then also when the show airs, you get that, nickel or whatever it is, So I started making cues.
Of course.
I'm a multi-instrumentalist. So, the first thing that goes out the door, though, is the drums. You don't record live drums to any of this stuff. It needs to be produced as quickly and efficiently as possible. So I'm banging out the electronic drum stuff or putting my loops in.
Loops, there you go.
Doing my bass work, whether it's synth
Do you
bass.
use real? Okay, no.
I used real bass on a lot of the stuff, actually.
Really?
I enjoy playing bass. So any opportunity I get to play bass, I do it. And I'm playing keys and some piano and B3 and guitar and anything that I need for these cues,
Right.
They're not songs in this TV business. They're cues because they're either 10-second little bumpers or 30-second little segue stingers. There's all this terminology that you learn. And it took me a month to get 30 of these stupid cues done. And I use 40 in one episode. So I know the numbers. I know how many cues it takes to put in a half an hour episode. And I'm like, this will take me forever. So I built that library of 30 or 40 cues, which I still use.
Right.
But I figured out, I'm like, okay, how are these? There's a lot of TV shows, and I know that there's not that many composers actually doing this type of stuff, custom wise, for shows, unless it's big network stuff, So I'm huge Anthony Bourdain fan. So I watch Anthony Bourdain and I get to the credits and I see, the music library that they use. And I'm like, okay, take note of that. And I'm watching the History Channel or I'm watching DIY Network or HGTV and all these home improvement shows. And I'm just writing down. And I started seeing the overlap. I'm like, all these shows are digging out of the same pile of cues from these libraries. And you learn that these libraries, you can't really compete with them what in terms of what I was trying to do all by myself. They've got thousands of composers,
contributors
contributing to this massive library that they're putting in thousands of fresh cues every month for music supervisors to sift through and place in the show. So that's when it became apparent to me that I wasn't going to be the custom composer of this show, the scorer, if you will. I was going to be the music supervisor and get a library, broker this deal. And then that's where I got my 3 quotes. I called APM in New York. I called Audio Networks in LA here. And I called one other one. And the one that Anthony Bourdain used was a little out of our price range.
Are they really expensive?
Yeah. They can be.
They're not like audio blocks, like $100.
No, it's
for the
thousands of dollars.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
In terms of, I don't know how much Anthony Bourdain you watched, but it's cinematic what they did with the music, and rightfully so, because they are traveling all over the world with him, doing these pretty deep interviews with people. It wasn't just about food; it got a lot deeper
into their character.
And and every episode was like a movie in terms of the score. It was like if they were in India, the music was
what it was
from India, or if they're in Japan. So that inspired me. But at the same time, it was a little disheartening finding out the price tag that comes along with a library that's that vast and that, you're talking orchestrated stuff. When you're hiring symphonies to create cues.
Yeah. It's not cheap.
It's not cheap. And, so I brokered a deal with Audio Networks and that was satisfactory to the folks at PBS and the startup production and became the music supervisor. So I've been doing that since season 5.
Nice. Wait. We'll come back with more stories from you after this word from our sponsor.
Of course.
And we're back with Mark Damian. Mark, you know what? Such an inspiration, no? That you're able to do this, that you're able to diversify, because there are people who come up with more excuses than solutions. Right? Oh, it's the pandemic. I don't have any gig. What's going to happen to me? But did you without anticipating anything, were you always keen on diversification?
I think we talked about it last time I was here about the audio bug bit me at an early age.
Yeah.
You know, I was in my teens, and we talked about...
No, you were younger than your teens when
I started recording in studios. I was about 14 when the guys in the band were in their 20s, so I got to see this world of it wasn't like this huge multi-million-dollar studio or anything, but in Sterling Heights, Michigan, I had my first studio experience. And, you know, the tracking aspect, okay, we're recording drums first.
Yes.
And then you're done. And now we're on to the bass player.
Right.
And now we're on to the guitar player. So I had a lot of time sitting next to the audio engineer trying to figure out what he was doing to get things to sound the way they did.
But I mean, even the jobs that you took, like being manager of Guitar Center, all that stuff, exposed you to a lot.
You got a good memory. Did you watch the interview recently?
No, I was just...
It's been over a year.
Yeah.
So. Good for you.
You know, I mean... I
don't remember yesterday for crying out loud.
No, but seriously, it's... Because that episode was very, very impressive also. You impressed upon me the fact that, you know what, there is some sort of life IQ as well as musical IQ going on within you. I mean, ups and downs and all that. But you were able to land on both feet. And at the same time, you were able to, how do I say it? Not stand your ground, but express who you are and where you are at that point. Like a while ago, you said, I had to tell Laith that I was going to go on this 6-week tour. Other people wouldn't do that. Other people would wait until the last minute. And
yeah, I think that there's I've always tried to take a sincere approach. You know, just hash it out. You know,
like even
talk about it with whoever you're whether it's an employer or a band leader or whoever you're working with. Just have a conversation. I mean, I have as a working drummer, just that aspect alone. I mean, I read about it in Modern Drummer all the time or wherever about, you know, these guys are touring with multiple people throughout the year. And sometimes there's some overlap there.
Right.
You know, the drummers from Toto or the drummer for, you know, Katy Perry or whoever it is. These guys are not just playing with one artist. And it gets really interesting scheduling-wise sometimes where it's like, wow, I'm still on tour with this person, and you're wanting me for 1 week, you know, the last week that I'm on tour with this person. So you're going to lose the gig? Maybe. Maybe you do lose the opportunity.
Like imagine Abe Laboriel Jr. being employed by Paul McCartney, but when Paul's done, he can...
Yeah, I think Abe's just on retainer, man. I think Abe's just relaxing at home when Paul's not working. So I'm maybe not the best example, but, you know, Shannon Forrest or, you know, the names go on and on. You know, Vinny Caliuta, these guys that are working drummers of the highest caliber.
Right.
I can't imagine the scheduling conflicts that come up. And sometimes, you know, and I've read about it where it's like Christina Aguilera moved her entire tour because she wanted so-and-so, and the name is escaping me right now, but the guy played with Justin Timberlake and Christina at the same time. And the tour was overlapping by like a couple weeks, and she was pissed. But she moved her entire tour dates. And that's a lot of phone calls. That's a lot of management getting on the phone and being like promoters just for the drummer. So that guy must bring something to the table. Yeah. And that's what you got to do. If you're important enough to the operation, then I think that people are going to work with you.
How can you be at the level of importance to the operation?
Boy, well, you got to be good at what you do.
Okay.
You got to be liked personality wise. And that's probably more important a lot of times.
Thank you.
so often you hear of people that are really good at what they do in terms of whether it's a musician or whatever, but you've got to share a very small space with these people. When I was just in Michigan, I was staying at Ken's condo, you know, and you know, and we're working together in not a small studio. It's actually a very nice sized studio, Plymouth Rock Recording Company. Shout out. In Plymouth, Michigan. But, you know, we're living in a space together for a certain amount of time. Then we're going straight to the studio, or we're going, you know, there's a lot of running around, and you're in each other's space all the time, whether it's in that type of scenario or taking a flight together to wherever you're going, or on a tour bus. A tour bus is even, you know, I don't have to tell you, you know, it's a thing. So you have to be tolerated, you know, personally. And
good point. When you say you have to be tolerated, and at the same time,
that's on the low end. That's a term that's like, that's on the low end. You have to be tolerated. You have to be liked.
Yes,
you know.
But at the very least, you have to be tolerated.
Right.
And you have to be tolerant as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I have no patience. And
really?
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm terrible about that sort of thing. But, you know, I've been working with Ken Roberts now for, God, it's
a decade?
Probably 22 years
22 years now, yeah.
And we don't always get along, oddly enough.
What's the name of that band again? What's the name of your band again? How do you say with the say the name, Mike?
Which the band that we were originally in the late 90s, early 2000s was Sweaty Suede Lips. Sweaty Suede Lips. Not right off the tongue, right?
Sweaty Suede Lips. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. So that being said, 22 years you and Ken have been.
We don't
together.
always see eye to eye when you're together for that duration of time. You know, there's a lot of common ground, and then especially, I mean, we started working together in our early 20s,
right?
And you know, he had already had a record deal with Warner Brothers, Polygram. He bounced around to different labels. He was the guy that knew more than I did, about stuff, and we bonded over, you know, bands like Duran and Japan, and he got me into more obscure stuff like the David Sylvian, and we talked about all that stuff. Yeah. And you don't necessarily, you know, I was just holding on for dear life because they're throwing all kinds of stuff at me in terms of I need to grow a third arm just to pull off this drum track, you know. 9 Inch Nails was the bar, setting the bar for what we wanted to sound like and wanted to do. And, you know, but that aside, as you grow up, you start to formulate your own opinions about things and your own, you know, he was always at the controls for mixing. You know, we put out a record under the band name Cleanse when Sweaty Suede Lips was done. And he was the primary figure in that. And I was playing some bass and I was playing drums and doing some backing vocals here and there. God forbid I touch a synthesizer around that guy. He's the synth guru. So, you know, no need for me to get my hands in that. But I there was always this kind of back seat, you know, that I was fine with, comfortable with. But then, you know, by the time you're in your mid-30s, you're starting to formulate your own opinions. And especially because I really wanted to take control over my career in terms of mixing audio. I felt like I had something to offer in that. And especially when I got into television mixing and, you know, my stuff is being broadcast all over the world on various TV stuff, you know, stations. I feel like my day has come, you know? So you've
paid your dues. Yeah.
So you start to rub each other the wrong way when.
So when was the first time you said, Ken, I think we're not going that route?
I don't know when the first time was, but it was some years ago. No,
it was like, what? Huh? Did you just say something?
Right. Yeah. He just thinks I'm an old ornery man now. It's just like I'm set in my ways. I'm like, well, yeah, there's a little bit of truth to that, I'd say. But no, we work well together, and I think everybody just needs to know what their place is. You asked me last time I was here, which was a little over a year ago, you know, okay, so you and Ken are producing Josie Pace. it is Ken Roberts who is producing Josie Pace, and we used to be the team of producers like
Right.
Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis kind of thing.
Yes.
But when you get into a project, everybody kind of finds their spot,
Right.
And I know what I contribute to the thing is valuable. But I had to. I'm not producing. So, what are you going to cry about it, or are you just going to, you're going to do what your job is and do it to the best of your ability? So, that's what I do.
But you know what? When you say that, you say it with such humility and not resignation, but more, I'm comfortable being in this place.
That takes time.
Elaborate on that, because a lot of the folks watching might not be in that position yet.
Yeah.
When you say it takes time, what was the struggle like?
Well, I look back to like I just mentioned the last time that it was brought up. I wasn't in a good spot about it, to be honest. I was more that resigned, like, oh man, I'm kind of bummed that I'm not the guy.
You were kind of salty,
a little salty about it, but now I see the amount of work that it's taking him,
right?
And I'm like, fine, you go for it, man. He took the ball and ran with it, and he's got a vision of what, Josie and him work so well together in the writing room, and how he produces her tracks. I mean, I think we talked about it before.
Yes.
We take the Depeche Mode approach, at least the old Depeche Mode approach, when Alan Wilder was still. Doing a lot of the production stuff that sounded so great on the albums like Violator. She writes everything on acoustic guitar, and he turns it into the synth madness that it becomes, and that's the sound. So, how especially being, almost 3,000 miles away from the nucleus of what's going on, like, what do I expect? So stop feeling sorry for yourself, and, without my live drums, I feel good about what my contribution is. I think that you really have to feel good about what your contribution is and find your spot. You want to produce something, go out and produce something.
But you know what's nice about Ken and Josie is that even if you're 3,000 miles away, you're still the drummer of that.
Well, and that's the value. Obviously, they can't find anybody else that's it's going to fill the spot like I do. So, fine, feather in my cap. And, I was just in Detroit recently tracking drums for a new song. And, usually the process is I demo something out here at my studio to send to him to get an idea of, what's going to happen during that session where you're paying money an hour, per hour for. We didn't even do that this time. And, it still went, I think I was done in 2 hours, and it went really, really smoothly because I know exactly what he's looking for.
Yes.
He's banging out drum parts to give me to listen to. And I know when he wants exactly what he banged out in those MIDI tracks, or when he wants
sounds like, or
something in that vein, or if he wants me to play around what's happening, because that's going to stay there.
Yes.
So we kind of can, finish each other's sentences in that way, So after 22 years of working with somebody, even the stuff that's not so pleasant, to deal with, it's still a heck of a lot better.
But you see,
for the
Mark,
whole operation.
You've how do I say this? You've worked with different people, different industries, and you mentioned being and being personable is more important than being good at what you're good at, because anybody can be good at what they're good at, but if they're a dick,
you're just a dick.
Right? It doesn't really count anymore.
Right.
Now, again, it all boils down to family values, growing up, and all that.
Sure.
But then, here's my question though. Different personalities.
Yeah.
And I remember when we did the first interview, you were like, wow, I'm getting all these opportunity to talk. And I go, why? And then you said, because the drummer because I never got to talk. I just had to say my name and Mark Damian, I'm the drummer.
Hello.
And that was it, right?
That was it.
But here, you're working with different personalities. How did that affect you as a person and as a musician in the field that you're in, and now you're your own boss. You run your own business.
Oh man, I don't think you're ever your own boss.
You think so?
I definitely think that to be true, because even, you know, if you want to take Gary Brado, the host and creator of Startup,
well, there you go. Yeah,
his boss is the viewership, man. If he can't sell sponsorship for that show, then he's done. You know, so season 9 is coming up, you know, and in June I'm going to be touring on that, and so I can look at him as my boss,
right?
I can look at the viewership as my boss. I can look at Laith El-Sadi as my boss. I can even look at Ken Roberts as my boss for the Josie Pace project.
So it's more you're more into the interdependence of everything.
Yeah, I mean, the boss is the entity. You don't necessarily look at it as a person.
Expand on that, because what you're saying is, not just a cog in a wheel, but if all those moving parts are doing their job, that entity becomes more powerful.
Absolutely, and that's what it takes. I mean, this the Josie Pace project. That's exactly what it is. It's a project, and it's not even just the 3 of us. There's so many people involved. Oh my gosh, just on the video end, the people that are shooting, the people that are carrying equipment, like every entity of the people that we're using, you try to find we've worked with, video people that worked out for a certain amount of time, and then the personalities just got in the way. Ooh. And the work started to suffer. So you're done. You're moving on, and it's best for everybody. I don't think that the people that we moved on from are necessarily bummed that we moved on from them, because they you set a standard, and if you can, it's very difficult to have a standard with a budget, a tight budget. Does that make sense? I think it does.
It makes perfect sense.
But at the same time, if you want that high level of output, and you're trying to do something, and Ken has a way of finding really, really good people that will take a pay cut because they believe what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's important, because I think a really good example is when you see somebody, getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something of that, nature. They are always looking at that. They're always thanking that one person that stuck with them from day one, that they weren't making any real money at that point. It's usually a manager or somebody, an agent or something that believed in them. And that's, Oracle Management is a perfect example. I mean, there's no money until money is made.
Right.
So they're working their butts off.
In other words, you are their investment.
Exactly.
Yes.
And whether it's that, that type of way to look at it, or investing in yourself.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily easy, but you got to put the work in.
Okay. We'll be back after this, but later I want to talk about putting the work in. We weren't able to touch on you're here right now, but there was once a time you were in the dumps, and I want to...
Time is it?
It's time to talk about it.
All right.
I want to talk about that because other people might think that when they're down, they just want to stay down because there's nowhere else to go. But you're an inspiration with regard to that. So we'll be back with Mark Damon after this. All right, and we're back with my good friend Mark Damian. So, drummer, music producer, field audio, music supervisor,
audio post mixer, film trailer sound designer, all the job titles.
Record producer and all that. Mm-hmm. And before the break, I mentioned that there was a time in your life where none of this existed, and everything was going to hell in a handbasket. According to you, there were
The dark years.
The dark years.
The dark moments.
How dark were those moments? Were there drugs involved?
Sure. Yeah. In an industry like the music or entertainment industry, period, it's they're out there.
A lot of them are. But did it engulf you? Did it get to you?
A little bit. It's not. It's so taboo to talk about that stuff, because we're all fighting for these gigs out here,
right? And
the last thing you want to do is let the cat out of the bag that you had issues.
We're not gonna do that. Okay, is that a cucumber?
No, that's our safe word, cucumber. Not cute. No cucumbers here.
Okay.
But it's funny that I use the term cucumber because they say in the program, once a pickle, never a cucumber again. So
yes.
The difficulties of getting past a lot of that stuff, the drinking, drugs, and things like that, it's a daily routine. It's a daily routine to
overcome.
I mean, it's an everyday, like, you have to take care of yourself better.
Amen. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not always easy to wake up and be like, okay, I'm going to meditate for my 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to, make a healthy breakfast. I'm not going to put that extra creamer in my coffee.
Yes.
I'm going to go out and do my 3.5 mile jog. And then I'm going to hit the studio and work for 2 hours just on drums, and then mix a TV show for 6 hours. The regimen has to be there. And if you don't have the regimen, then you're going to have time on your hands. And when you have time on your hands, therein lies the problem. So no, I mean, you set it up as there was a time where I didn't have these things.
Right.
I was in the middle of those things.
Wow.
And had the issue of, okay, you're taking this a little bit in the wrong direction. You're now stacking up the bottles every day and still putting the output that's that high standard that we talked about in the last segment. And fooling a lot of people until you're not fooling them anymore. So yeah, there was a time where I had to call it. I had to be like, okay, I can't do this on my own. I gotta get help.
But see, it takes a lot of courage and honesty inside
to
yourself.
Talk about it on a podcast.
Yes. First to admit to it and then to talk about it on a podcast. I mean, of course, the goal is there are other people in denial.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I think anybody that goes through any sort of program, whether it's like 12-step or just a rehab in general, just to detox and get right with themselves, a lot of those people end up teaching others how to do it and paying it forward. I think we mentioned that earlier in the interview too, all these catchphrases. But that's the thing is it's such a feeling of despair when you think you're all by yourself and you're dealing with this problem. Because usually, you're barricaded in your apartment or whatever your living space is, and you're hiding this problem, drinking or drugs, whatever it is. And, that's, if you don't talk to people about it, then it becomes a bigger problem. So I don't know. I don't know where to go with it.
No, how, when did you realize there was a problem? Because again, like in my case, I had my own addiction as well. And it was ruining my life. When I said that during when we were off cam, I said I've been in a relationship 4 times. Mm-hmm. And 3 of them were like in the dumps, and they were not because of my partners, they were because of me.
Uh-huh.
So I was in denial that it was because of me.
Sure.
And there was intervention there. Mm-hmm. And now I have this perfect relationship.
Right.
And I want to...
Because you figured it out.
I want to keep it that way. But I had to ask for help.
Sure.
Right? Like with you had all these good things going on. And
they were never good enough was the situation. Having a high standard for what you expect out of yourself can be really good, and it can be really, really, really bad at the same time. So I was in a spot where...
How old were you, by the way?
I went to a rehab in 2019.
Okay.
So it's fairly fresh.
Fairly fresh, yeah.
And because I was a late bloomer. I mean, what can you say? You know, I really didn't develop any sort of habitual drinking on I'll be honest, until I moved to Los Angeles. I was really hard on myself with, you know, as I said a million times when I was doing my reconnaissance missions from Detroit to LA.
Yes.
I wanted to come here, hit the ground running. Was my catchphrase. I want to hit the ground running because I was tardy to the party. I was already in my 30s.
Right.
And I'm competing with 22-year-olds or younger, graduating, you know, Musicians Institute or Berkeley or wherever they're coming out of, and they'll work for nothing,
right?
You know, just to get the gig, and that's my competition. So you gotta look a certain way, you gotta act a certain way, you gotta play a certain way, and you gotta have a handle on technology a certain way.
Right.
It's all these entities, and I felt like, you know, I was failing. Even though I had, you know, great gigs with Laith Al-Sadi. The Josie Pace thing came a little bit later. I think we started working together in 2015. But then there was all this, you know, like the whole, I'm not the producer guy anymore, or I'm not,
right.
I was focusing so much on what I wasn't getting opportunity-wise that I had a real problem with it. And I had one situation where when I first moved to town, it was hit the ground running, and I was doing every open mic, open jam session, as they call it out here. There was one every night of the week. So I just wanted to hit every single one and just get in there, right? It took a year for me to get on one of those stages because I was just always getting out-muscled, or, yeah, we'll get you up here in a minute, you know, kid. Whatever. And I just like, what do I got to do to get in there? And I was blowing through a lot of money, not having a day job and doing all this work. So, or all this, you know, running around all these different, you know, it was Cafe Cordial on Tuesdays.
Oh my God.
It was the baked potato on Mondays. It was the Federal on whatever day. And then the weekends you go see.
Wait, the Federal had it too?
I think the Federal had something. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Either they had something like an open jam, or it was just, and still is today, like a musician's hang.
Right,
like all the touring musicians are hanging there, you know. So kids,
you know
kids that are moving to LA, you want to know where they're all hanging out. It's the Federal on Lancashire. So anyway, I was blowing through all kinds of money and needed to get my finances situated. So I got a job at Center Staging, which is one of the premier backline and rehearsal facilities that in the country, you know. And I'm not sure how much we touched on that.
A lot, yeah. Because that's where you got all your endorsements. And
I eventually got the relationships to get the endorsements in.
But my question was with regard to that, when you were there, when you finally got
Am I sidestepping the question? Is that what I was doing? Cucumber. No, I wasn't. I was leading to the point is Center Staging got me an opportunity to audition for, and I'm not going to mention the name, but he's one of the, you know, prolific songwriters of our time.
Yes.
Big artist, huge artist, an artist that I can call home to mom and dad, and they'll know who that is. You know, when I say, hey, I have an audition for such and such, they're going to be like, oh, we know who that is. And that was going to, you know, make my life, you know.
Yes.
So to get the audition and nail the audition, to get called back for a second audition, to lead to a third audition, to help them audition the other members of the band, because this whole band was being replaced.
Wow.
So solo artists of large stature was getting rid of his entire band. And I mean, it looked pretty darn good. It was my first audition in LA, big time, and I nailed it. And tour manager is from Michigan, and he's like, "Oh, dude, I love you. Everybody loves you. The whole camp loves you. You're the guy. You know, get this live DVD of, you know, live from such Paris or wherever, and learn the live versions of the songs, and you're gonna kill this." And I did, and I got hired, and I did 2.5 weeks worth of rehearsals. And one of the big things on my bucket list is touring in Europe.
Right.
that was
your ticket.
First on the docket was the European tour. So we're going to do 2.5 weeks of rehearsals at Center Staging. And then we're going to do a week's worth of production rehearsals in England. And then tour, play Glastonbury. All the stuff, all the, the boxes that I wanted to check were on this tour. And then I got the phone call right before. It's like, pack your bags. Packing the bags, phone rings. So-and-so got cold feet. He's keeping his same old band. So thanks for your services. You're done. Click. And I was just crushed. So I took the long way around, but that's when, just crack the bottle and
right.
just dive in. And it started there. So I like to blame that artist for my alcoholism, but I can't. It's an internal thing, and it's brain chemistry. That's the thing that's important to know is the brain chemistry part of it. You learn about that in rehab,
right?
You just become that mouse that's clicking on the bad stuff.
Yes.
Because that's what your brain knows. And once you go down that way, sometimes it happens early in life and sometimes it takes a while, like it took for me. I didn't know that I had an alcohol problem until I was in my late 30s. So how I didn't even think that was a thing. Like I thought you figure it out pretty early on. When you turn 21 and you're able to go to bars, if you take it to that next level that you're not supposed to take it to, you figure it out pretty early on. But I never had a drinking problem early on. I had a drinking problem later.
But acknowledging that helps you to sidestep the bottle.
Yeah. You got to acknowledge it, and I'll say that it I did the rehab thing for a couple months in late 2019, and spent a reasonable amount of time in 2020. Okay, and then not so okay. So, like I said, it's a struggle.
It's a struggle.
I shouldn't say it's a thing. It's a struggle. We'll call it a struggle, but it's,
It took me a while to break cigarettes and a little bit of drugs. It took me a while. Yeah. Cigarettes, drugs easier. Cigarettes I quit in 2001.
Oh, wow.
Completely.
Wow, good for you.
Since I was 12 years old. I've been smoking since I was 12. Quit when I was 30.
Wow. Yeah, I started around the same time, but I'm not as good at quitting that as everything else. Drugs take too long to recover from these days.
Yeah. Oh.
When you get older, you can't do those drugs like you used to.
But then again, you have to see what's more important, right? Is it doing the drugs or doing the work? And then you lose sight of the goal, which is the work and the goal.
Well, you think that you can
do both?
You at least I did.
Oh,
I thought that I could get away with being miserable on my own time and drinking and doing the drugs, and still showing up to whether it was rehearsals or gigs and be okay. But I mean, there's one particular band that I was with in LA that drinking, I was so miserable with my position in the music scene in LA that I was just drinking so much at the gigs. I was so miserable. I lost that gig because of drinking, but I didn't acknowledge that until a few years later when I went to rehab. I'm like, it was me. It wasn't them.
There you go.
And so it ties it right into what you said about your relationships.
Yes.
Is like, if you can finally figure out that you're blaming everybody, but
except yourself.
You're pointing the finger and there's three pointing right back at you. All the catchphrases. And we're covering them all.
It's nice. It's nice that you and I are talking about this, that we're vulnerable with regard to that, because there are people watching who think that we're to blame, but not them. And I think for them, for you guys watching, and not to blame you, but maybe they should start asking themselves the same question we asked ourselves at one point, and I guess we're still asking ourselves, because would you say that rehab helped you find direction?
Absolutely. I still have a whole list of things on my refrigerator that I try to keep in front of my face every day, that what I learned from rehab. And it, like I said, it's the complete package. It's doing the meditations, doing the yoga, if
Isn't
that's
it
your
nice?
thing, or It's nice when it's working, when you allow it to work.
The keyword, when you allow it.
When you allow it to work.
I told you what, I'm not going to tell you how my brother died, but my brother died recently, and Mike knows about this, JG knows about this. I just went into, not clinically depressed, but the whole grieving process of depression, right? It was I was such a wreck, and I had to go back to meditation.
Yeah.
I had to make it work because...
And meditation's not easy.
No.
And that's why a lot of people don't do it, but they really should. Even the 10-minute guided one that you can get on your... So that's all I use. The
Headspace, there's what do you use? I use Headspace.
I use Calm. I use the Calm.
Same thing, yeah.
And there's people that I've met in rehab that were like, oh, no, I can't meditate. My anxiety issues. Well, anxiety and depression were, kind of at the forefront of my main issues.
Yes.
I was born with depression and anxiety issues. So, but I also made the mistake, and this might help people out too that are listening and watching. I thought, even halfway through rehab, I thought that if I can just knock out the depression and the anxiety, then I'll still be able to have a couple drinks without a problem. Well, I stand corrected. It just doesn't work that way. It worked for a certain amount of time. Like there were some months there that I was just like, okay, yeah, I can have a couple drinks.
Yeah.
But then I have a brain that works a certain way that there's always an excuse to drink. You're in a great mood, you're on the top of your game, everything's great, you want to celebrate.
Right.
You have a drink. You're miserable, everything's wrong, you want to drown your sorrows, you have a drink.
Right.
So where do you not drink? What part of your day do you not drink? I didn't drink. I wasn't one of those people waking up in the morning and pouring my vodka. No. I waited till the sun went down, at least. But when that sun went down, and it's still hard, I don't have that many days under my belt. I'm not a day counter. I'm not one of those. I got 30 days. I got 60 days. I don't care about.
So every day every day.
Man, I was on my way here. I'm like, we did a 4-hour interview last time I was here. What the hell am I going to talk about? I'm nervous. I want a drink,
right.
And I had to talk myself out of having a drink. So it's a daily process, and thankfully, I didn't drink. I'm completely sober and doing this interview.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
It's really nice to have you here with all these talk, because people thought, when they asked me, so who are you having on Tuesday? Because we're taping this on a Tuesday, and I said Mark, Damian, and some from Filipino friends of mine, drummers. You guys are gonna talk drums? I go, no.
We got some other stuff in store.
I have an agenda.
Nice.
But this is nice because people think it's all about the fun and games, but I want them to see the hard work that you've put in, not only to where your career is right now, but to where your life is right now. Mm-hmm. Because
it's also nice to remember things.
Yeah.
Now,
not a blur. What happened last night?
Doing 2-3 week tours with Laith Al-Sadi. We're in, somewhere in New York. And I can't even remember the shows because I'd start the pre-game warm up, getting loosened up backstage. And, at the end of the night, I look over at, the side of my drum kit, and every bottled water still has the top on it. Oh, and there's about 6 empty vodka and sodas. And I just don't remember the show, I played awesome, and I was able to maintain a certain level of professionalism and output on the drum kit and vocally.
In spite of.
Yeah. And then after the show, that's when the real party starts, right? So you're already all the way in the bag. And then by the time I get to the hotel room, I'm on the hotline, calling the suicide hotline because I'm just so miserable. And I just played an amazing show in front of 2,200 people.
Right. What
What do I have to be upset about? I have no idea.
Up to now?
What's that?
Up to now? You don't have any idea still?
I still struggle with why I want to wreck stuff when it's good.
Right.
I have that compulsion of everything, you look down the one sheet here, it's like Josie Pace, Laith Al-Sadi, Alloy Tracks, film trailer stuff. I got cues in Blade Runner. You know, it's like the trailer, not the movie, the trailer. Just the trailer. But see how I downsize and not the movie, just the trailer.
You don't have to downsize, by the way. You're an amazing drummer.
Blade Runner bought me a car, so that was,
Amen.
that was a nice down payment on a car, not the whole car.
There you go again.
Self-deprecation, it's a problem, but no, but that's the honest to God truth is I don't know what that is. And it takes therapy, and it takes acknowledgement of, okay, this is not the way I should be thinking about things. I should be really proud of X, Y, and Z. I should be happy that somebody calls and wants to talk to me on a podcast.
We're proud of you, by the way.
Well, thank you. But honestly, I really do appreciate it. And I wasn't sure how it was going to feel talking about, like, you know, the dark side of things.
But it's fine. Are you comfortable?
I'm a cucumber.
Okay.
No, I'm happy with the idea that somebody out there might be feeling the same way and know that at the very least somebody else feels the same way. And it's a daily struggle. It doesn't go away. No. Or at least it hasn't gone away from me, and I'm working on the tools
my son is a hip hop artist. He's 25 years old. He suffered from depression. It's under control. He's not on meds. He was, not anymore. He uses music as his therapy. He can't drink. He has to stay off the bottle. And, you know,
is that from experience that he just can't go that route?
Yeah. But as a father, like I had him on the podcast, as a father, you know, we have to go through that struggle every day. I mean, there's nothing more I could do but hold his hand, but he's got to walk through that.
Yeah, and you can't be there to hold his hand every minute of every day.
But then again, you know, like while I'm holding his hand, he's taking it away from me because he wants, and I have to trust him to know where to go. And then it was weird because now that he's sober and all that stuff, and I was going through my experience of depression, and I didn't know I was going through depression, I had to call him up. And I go, you know, your uncle just died, right? And he goes, yeah. Are you going to depression, Dad? Yeah. And I go, I think I am. And then he gave me every symptom of advice.
And then hopefully some of the tools to deal with it. Yeah,
that's what he did. Yeah. And that's what you're doing now to me and to people watching that. I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. You were honest with Laith that you had to do the TV tour. Right. And eventually you were honest with yourself as well. And I think honesty really helps, no?
Sincerity, honesty, however you want to look at it. It's, God, I'm sweating. Cucumber. No, you're right, though. I mean, being honest with yourself, being honest with other people, being as sincere as possible. And, you know, I alluded to it earlier. It's such a taboo thing to talk about because depression, anxiety issues, social anxiety issues. I think I have a lot of that too, even though I can go into a room full of people and hold my own and have good conversation. A lot of the times I cower from that because of social anxiety issues. Thoughts of suicide, all that stuff, you know, it's, nobody wants to let the cat out of the bag. Everybody wants to pretend they're okay, especially in front of a potential employer.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, I think I'm just to the point where if the phone doesn't ring, I really don't care, you know, and that might sound a little dark, but,
that's actually freedom, don't you think?
It is. I think it comes with age. You know, I'm 44 now. You know, and I'm not competing.
By the way, you don't look 44.
Well, I'm holding on for dear life. I feel like $100. I feel like $100, man. I do my best. But no, but seriously, it's like, you know, I'm not in a position to be competing with those 20-somethings that are coming out of those schools or the younger musicians that are playing pop stuff. Those days are probably done for me in terms of running that rat race. And there's something extremely liberating about just being okay and done with that.
Yeah.
And having amazing people like Josie and Laith and Troy, who I work with at Alloy Tracks on film trailer stuff, or Gary and the whole crew at Startup.
Yes.
I've got amazing people that I work with, and we're doing stuff on our own, and we don't have day jobs, and it's an amazing thing.
Attitude of Mark, attitude of gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to be grateful that you have these people around you.
Gratitude is really something that I had to learn a lot about, and it took rehab to learn about that. And I have, under that checklist of all the things that I have on my refrigerator, is an area every day to write at least 2 things that
to be grateful for,
that you have gratitude for. And sometimes it's hard to come up with 2. Sometimes it's easy, but it's a daily thing. And you gotta, it's better than any alternative. You know what I mean?
And you know what? I know what you mean. And it's nice, especially to be prepared with regard to that, because the pandemic just happened, and a lot of people who weren't depressed got depressed because of the pandemic.
It didn't make anything easier for me. That's for damn sure. I mean, I was still in outpatient rehab when the pandemic was happening. It was March. Actually, I know when the first shutdown day was. It was March 13th, because I was supposed to have a big birthday party for my girlfriend. At the Standard in Hollywood, which is closed now for good.
Oh my God!
And that was the first night that they called it. They just said, nope, we can't have anybody out. So I was still in outpatient rehab, and I was. Where were we going with this? I can't remember. I lost my train of thought.
No. With regard to the pandemic, and then a lot of people.
I don't know how things would have worked out for me in terms of staying on the straight and narrow if we didn't go through the pandemic. Yeah. Because a few months in, I'm like, I'm just bored, man. I want to drink. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. I'm somebody that goes to movies and dinners and hangs out with people and plays gigs and does all this stuff, and I'm not able to do any of that. I'm fine with getting a bottle and retiring to my little
corner,
my quarters, and so I don't know. I think the pandemic really kind of hit me pretty hard in terms of even though I am on medication for depression and anxiety, which does work, by the way. I went kicking and screaming into meds. I never wanted to touch meds for that, because I thought I was going to lose an edge or lose my personality, or something was going to happen where it was out of my control. Not true, kids or adults or anybody watching. They really do work. The pain in the ass is you have to figure out which one works.
Yes.
But I had all the time in the world. I was in rehab. So it's like, okay, this is the time to try. I'm going to try this one. Well, this one doesn't allow this part of your body to work, so I'm not going to take that one anymore. I'm going to try this one. Okay, this one causes you to sleep for 14 hours a day. Well, that's no good either. So I'm going to, and it's a process to get on them and then get off of them and then find the right one. And it took me 6, I think, 4 or 6. It's an even number. But when you finally find it, it's like, wow, you can feel when you're about to go low into your mood, you can feel it kind of like a compressor. Yeah. Like anybody that does audio stuff.
It's not going to allow you to go lower. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's all it does. It doesn't have to change your life for for the worst. And but yeah.
Okay.
What else you got?
No, we're gonna cucumber that. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about your one sheet. We'll be back with Mark Damian.
All right.
And we're back. Okay. Now, what's going on moving forward 2021?
2021.
Aside from new management for Josie Pace, what else is happening?
What else is happening? Well, we have like I mentioned earlier, we've got a ton of content that we're going to release one way or another. Label or no label, we're gonna release it. Lots of videos.
Good for you, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, we'd like to get a record contract and do it that way.
Right.
For some reason. I'm not sure. I'm still on the fence about how record labels work these days.
You know what? It's so weird. Here's a story. So we were having this conversation with Paul Simpson of the Wild Swans, and he was like, I asked him, I go, did you know your band was big in the Philippines? Because they were really huge in the Philippines. And he said, had I known then what I know now, I would have gone to the Philippines and made a killing.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. My point is, this day and age, why still go, nothing against record labels, right? But why the record label route and not the indie route?
Yeah, I watched a documentary. I believe it was on Netflix or maybe Amazon Prime. I'm not sure which. It was called Instaband.
Hold on. What? When you say, I'm sorry. When you say, I saw his documentary on Netflix. I'm not sure if it was on Netflix. Maybe it was on Prime. I was going to add definitely on YouTube.
Definitely on YouTube. Wherever the source is. The name of this documentary was Instaband. Okay. So I don't know if you guys have seen this.
I haven't seen
particular program.
I'm going to search for it.
Check it out, because what you have to do as an independent artist is be on this thing.
I know.
All too much.
Yeah.
Okay. These kids are, they're setting up their own tour. They're doing amazing things on their own. And maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's because, I got this thing in 2007 or 2008,
right.
And sure, there was it has its place, but you have to do so much.
Yes.
And the trade-off with a label, so when you're indie, you're making 100% of everything that comes in.
Yes.
Okay. But how big is that pie? When you have a label, you have the possibility, at least, if they don't shelf you or some other.
That's what I'm scared about. There's
there's a lot of things that can happen that even when you get on a label, you think you've reached the pinnacle of the potential, but people have been getting signed and shelved, for decades.
Yeah.
It's been happening since the 60s.
Sometimes signed to be shelved so that the competition
tax write-off. You could be a tax write-off for a label. You know, it's really ugly what can happen.
At least what we're talking about is real to musicians who are wondering what goes on and all that.
Yeah. If you watch this Instaband documentary, it will illustrate what you need to do as an independent artist versus, and there's bands on this particular documentary that have been signed and have gone through that process that went back to being indie and being satisfied with that. So, and what is the question is, what is the product anymore? Because record labels used to put out records, whether it be vinyl, a CD, some sort of tangible object that you bring home and put in your player or put in your car to play, and now that's gone away. You're streaming on Spotify or Apple Music or what have you, and I mean that can be a whole another segment of what we can talk about for hours, because you're getting pennies, literally fractions of pennies for each stream on something like Spotify. Spotify is It's the devil. Let's just call it what it is. The industry has not caught up with where it needs to catch up with in terms of the legalities and the laws put in place for artists to actually get the same sort of compensation that radio stations have to pay, to spin your music. So it's a trade-off, and we're gonna work with Oracle management and figure out if that's the right route for us to go.
That's a good thing about having management. Then they can help you figure it out.
They want the biggest and best for us.
By the way,
we have that kind of potential.
Here's a nice little advice for you, or a nice little nugget for you and your viewers. So I have a niece, and she's into K-pop.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I
watched a documentary on that too. It's very interesting.
Very interesting. Right? Yes. And I was like, wow, forget the phenomenon, the product, the tangibles that are available. The music is on Spotify. But I'm having goosebumps because I was at Koreatown at the Galleria Market, and we bought a bunch of CDs and they weren't really just CDs; they were CD books.
Okay.
So there was a CD which you really don't listen to because you don't want to you don't want to touch that. You just want to listen to the catalog on Spotify, but you want to have that physical CD. But the physical,
so there's still a thing. The CDs are still a thing.
Yeah, but they don't care about. She doesn't have a player.
Oh, okay.
She just has. What she was after was the book because the book had.
So we're getting into merchandise.
Yes,
that's what it is. That's what everything.
So
is.
imagine Josie Pace, right? Like she's a great gal. Her. I mean,
she's a great gal. She'll love that,
right? I mean, the way she carries herself.
Yeah.
She's got the look. She's got the. She has
marketability is what. Yeah.
More than that.
Okay.
She's a story.
Yeah.
Which means she can be a coffee table book. Aside from being just an artist, she's more than there you go. She's more than just an artist because all these K-pop artists, their faces look all the same. And I'm
glad you said it.
And I'm like,
not me.
And I'm like, because I was at my niece's house.
Why is there 18 of them in the band too? It's like why does there have to be so many?
And I even teased her and said, name all of them. And she was naming all of them.
Really? Well, hey, that's good.
And all of them had 3-syllable names, right? Jongkwan Kim, Kim Jongkwan, Chang Ching Choi, all whatever their name was. But I'm like, amazing.
Well, that's good that she can name them though, because that means that they're actually paying attention to,
But then again, how? The book.
Right.
Because if you're not on TV, you're in that.
Well, and that's something that I wish I could talk more about, but there is a TV thing that is happening for Josie, and I can't really say anything about any more than that. There's a TV thing about to happen, and it'll be on something.
But you know what?
And
when Ken and Josie are here, invite them over here with you, huh?
Yeah, they're going to be here at the end of this month.
There you go.
Anytime
if they're interested, yeah. But that being said, what else is happening?
What else is happening? So we have this TV thing that's happening at the end of this month that I can't talk about.
Right.
Lots of videos, lots of new streaming singles about to happen. Good news in terms of the end of this pandemic, finally. Shows will probably be happening this summer. Laith Al-Sadi is already getting contacted, and I don't know if he'll be upset with me for saying that or not. I don't know what I can say and what I can't say about things that are in the future. But I can say that there's going to be live shows again.
Joe Rogan's back on tour.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Like doing the comedy route.
And I have 3 shows booked in April with a tribute band. I mean, the phone rang, I answered it, the tribute band for Robert Plant.
Oh, nice.
So cool. And it's all his 80s stuff that you don't hear too much of.
I know.
So I'm like, cool, I'll play 80s Robert Plant.
What was him with the honey drippers?
The honey drippers, yeah. Do you remember
where we were?
Yeah.
We
played that one.
Okay.
Of course. That's a big hit for him.
And then he did one with, what was his country music with?
The Alison Krauss album.
Yeah. Oh.
We don't touch any of that stuff. That would be hard to replicate, I think. And that's one of I'm big into vinyl records. I love buying new. I just picked up the new.
Which one?
Japan record, by the way. They released a Quiet Life reissue. Came out last week.
Dang.
It's on the way from London. But where was it going with that? The
Alison
Krauss Robert Plant record is one of the best sounding vinyls in my collection. It's an amazing record, but it's you have to have a band specifically set up for that sound.
Right.
I mean, what T-Bone did to produce that is just
amazing.
Yeah.
Talk about tribute and talk about being in a cover band. What's the difference between being in a tribute band and being in a cover band?
Cover band, you're covering a larger range of music, whether it be top 40 or retro stuff. You're covering a bunch of 80s artists, what have you. You're covering a lot of different Motown stuff. When you're in a tribute band, you're focused on one artist, and the West Coast has a lot of tribute bands, and I get called for a lot of tribute bands.
Here's my question though: do you have to play exactly the way the drums were played?
Yeah, in my point of view, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it really kind of depends. Let's go through the list here. I've done Bowie Tribute.
Well, that was nice.
That was fun.
Played with Click.
At first, it wasn't fun because it was a really raw operation, and they got better, and they killed it. So they're doing really well. The Click. So the first thing that we did was we covered the Ziggy Stardust record.
Right.
So it was very loose, and it was very, there was no click involved until we started to expand the repertoire into the 80s stuff.
You guys play The Man Who Ruled the World?
We've done all that. Yeah, we played the record top to bottom.
Wow.
For our first handful of shows, and then I left the group, and now I'm the sub that comes in when the guy that took the gig can't make it. I show up. And we do all what I consider the fun stuff. I'm a sucker for the 80s, man. I can't get away from it. So, or late 70s too. I mean, the fashion and Let's Dance record and that kind of stuff. That's a lot of the Nile Rodgers record.
Yes, we touched on that the first time. Yeah. So Bowie tribute. What else?
Rod Stewart. Did a Rod Stewart thing. Still get called for that group called Atlantic Crossing, and once again, it's like the stuff that he did when did he come out? Mid 60s, late 60s?
Wait, let's go back to Bowie. I have a question with regard to, because since you did tributes to these artists, you had to dissect these artists to get to the essence of them, right?
Absolutely.
What was your takeaway from Bowie?
Very loose on those early recordings. Studying the Ziggy Stardust record, because I'd heard those songs a million times, never played them, so you have to get into player mode, and you have to learn who these people are that played on the record, and you have to listen to it differently now,
right?
When you're charting out. And when you're charting out stuff and this goes for the Rod Stewart stuff too, when you're charting anything that came out in the 60s or early 70s, you know that they were all on drugs. And didn't have a lot of money for studio time because one take and they were out. You hear the bass player go into the chorus a measure early and they leave it on the record? Really? Do you play it that way live? I mean, what do you do with that when there's mistakes on the record? So
what do you do with that?
Well, I mean, the drums, what's a mistake? You're playing the groove and maybe you go to the ride cymbal too early.
Right.
I didn't hear any of that, really. But I did hear the bass player screwed up a lot on that record. The Ziggy started, I hate to throw him under the bus like that, but geez. And the Rod Stewart stuff the same way. It's like you're working with, the way I chart my charts, because I use them live with playing as many gigs.
Yeah.
I'm not using charts with Josie Pace or Laith El-Sadi because that's.
But the one-offs you have to.
But you have to chart the tribute band stuff. And I'm looking at my chart for a Rod Stewart song. Most of the time, you're dealing with 4s and 8s.
Yes.
Because I write big measure numbers, like the verse 1, 8 bars or 16 bars.
Yeah.
Chorus or pre-chorus and then chorus or whatever. But I'm always looking at these big numbers of like how many measures I'm playing for each section. And you're seeing things like 11s and 13s and like these oddball numbers because they're just jamming.
Yeah.
They're jamming.
And sometimes
and
they'll go into a 2/4 and then.
Yeah.
Right?
Bars of 2/4 in the midst and they were okay with complete time signature changes too back in those days. So you could be playing a completely different groove. So the later stuff is a lot easier to digest, I guess, is the answer, the short answer to that, because you had more structure and you had Nile Rodgers producing everything in the 80s. So there's a lot more 8s and 4s and 16s.
Because it's disco time, yeah.
Exactly.
What else? What other bands?
What other band? I did a Cure tribute.
How was that?
That was interesting. They're kind of more jam bandy than I expected them to be.
Right.
Once again, their later stuff was a little bit more structured, but you get into that earlier Cure stuff, and they're like gothic jam band.
Yeah.
And that was strange to me because I thought that I knew the Cure a lot better than I actually did. And that was a doubleheader. That was a New Year's gig right before the pandemic. So this would have been this was my first gig after rehab.
Okay.
And so no drinking,
right?
Which was really hard on New Year's Eve. I'm like, this is the trigger moment right now. If I can't make it through this one,
Right.
So it was a double header for me. I did an hour of Duran Duran,
Nice.
and an hour of The Cure.
Look at you.
Same band, but we changed clothes, obviously, for
Look
each
at
set.
you.
That was a lot of fun. And I had high hopes for the Duran Duran tribute because I'm such a huge fan.
Right.
You know, I was just the sub, but I came in with all the samples.
Yeah.
You know, when I played View to a Kill, I had the kick and snare triggered
Really?
for the actual, because you can actually trigger that stuff. I came in with it all, and they saw that I had an interest in that band in particular. That they're like, okay, the other guy is out, you're in. And then the pandemic hit, and all the gigs went away. So,
Dang.
you know, maybe that'll resume. I don't know, but being called for any gig is great.
Yes.
But at the same token, I can get really dark about like, another tribute band is calling me. Great, you know.
Right.
I don't want to get pigeonholed in that because a lot of those guys play with like, you know, the most recent one is this Robert Plant tribute. The bass player's from Pink Floyd tribute band. Another guy's from this other tribute. It's this incestual group of players that all play together all the time. And I landed that gig because the guitar player subbed for our guitar player in the Rod Stewart tribute band. So it's like it's its own network.
But you know that Arnel Pineda was in a cover band, and that's how he got discovered by Journey, right?
Is that right?
Yeah.
I thought he was a YouTube guy.
No,
I didn't realize
no.
that he was.
So his band was filmed because that's how we do it in the Philippines. Like people take videos of bands and someone just uploaded the video, and Neil Sean was.
Oh well, that's a reason to put up more YouTube videos, isn't
right?
it?
and you know, so where am I going with this? Just keep doing what you're doing. Just be grateful because for all you know, that's
gratitude. Gratitude is key.
And that's your setup for someone like maybe not Rod Stewart, but what about Robert Plant? Maybe he's looking for a drummer.
Hey, you never know.
Never know.
Never know.
But yeah, post those YouTube videos once it starts happening again.
Yeah, your producer was asking me, hey, man, when are we going to see more YouTube videos out of you? I'm like, oh, gosh, I got to get on it. It's so hard to keep up with because I have so much going on with Josie and a lot of stuff coming up with Lath. It's, you know, you got to do these 3-4 camera angle drum videos now to keep. All right. Well,
because Mike was at your studio and he was able to.
Yeah, but I only had one camera from that's how I do my videos. I do one, maybe two cameras. And, you know, the girl next door in the next door studio to me, Brittany, she's a great drummer. And I watch her YouTube and Instagram videos, and she's just flying in with the different shots.
That's fine.
Shots of the kick drum and shots of the overhead and shots from the side.
You're fine.
Like, man, I can't compete with this.
You don't need to. You just need to bring it out.
Just need to play.
Because I was like teasing Mike when I saw the video of was that Caesar's Veil? But yeah, so he did that video. I go, hey, where'd you do your drums? At Mark's studio. Ask Mark when's he doing.
When am I going to finally?
Ask Mark when is he doing another video?
Okay, let me ask you this: what should I do a video of? Because the big thing with drummers is doing a drum cover. I don't really do too much of that. I've done two. I've done a BT song, not BTS, by the way. A BT song, electronic artist.
By the way, that chair you're sitting on.
Yeah. Tell me BT was here.
No, the composer of BTS.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's his. That's where he wrote those hit songs.
Osmosis here. Trying to get
Osmosis, yes.
Trying to get some of the mojo.
Vince Nantes, shout out. So, yeah, do a cover of songs that you like.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, because Mark, see.
It's got to be searchable. You know, it's got to be something that somebody will find.
You know what, at this point.
Just not good at that stuff.
At this point, you're good at chops. But not every chop player is good at grooves. But you're good at grooves. So showcase that.
Okay. All right. I'll take that advice.
Because I mean, you can even make fun because you can play Rush, you can play Duran Duran, so you can play anything in between. I mean, you have nothing to prove. You just
exactly. So why do I gotta do more YouTube videos?
You have nothing to prove, but again, you have nothing to show.
Point. Touche.
So you need those YouTube videos.
If you go to my website, markdamian.com, and go to that video page, there's quite a plethora, if you will, of different
Where
videos.
was it last updated?
The last drum video that I did was probably one of the Josie cuts. So, I don't know. It's been a minute.
Oh, there you go.
It's been a minute.
But yeah, keep do videos for fun because you're an awesome drummer. That hands down, that I know. Nothing to prove.
And that's the easy part. It's getting the filming done and then thrown it in the computer and then remembering how to use Premiere because it's been so long since the last time I did it, and then just fumbling through and having that high standard of really wanting it to turn out exceptionally well. I know.
The more it happens.
And here's the other thing that I notice is the more produced it is, the less likely you're going to get people liking it. They like the more raw stuff.
Spontaneity is key.
That drives me nuts. I don't like that. I want the overproduction. I want, fireworks.
Like right now we have 3 cameras, but at the end of the day, we're just probably going to release the one in the middle and all that stuff because the comments from the viewers is like
they don't care about the
they just want to
cuts.
Tune in and hone into the conversation.
Raise your standards, people.
Yeah. Last words.
Last words.
Those are your last words? No?
Yeah, that's it. Those are my last words.
No, but seriously, what can you advise to young musicians or people coming to LA? Because all of us here, the 4 of us here in this room, are all immigrants to LA. Mm-hmm. What can you advise people coming to LA?
Be careful. Be careful what you wish for. I mean, it might not be all it's cracked up to be. But I'll leave you with this. Everyone's story is different. So the hardships might not be the same. It might be easier for you. It might be harder for you. So if you really want to do it, just do it and figure it out.
Nice.
That's it. That's all I got.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Damian.
Thank you.
You're awesome. That's all I'm gonna say.